So over the years, people have asked me, what was it like growing up around the business? It was definitely interesting. I would probably once or twice a year, I would accompany my dad on sales calls, even when I was very young, just to kind of learn about the business, kind of like take your kid to work day. Or, his office was actually a big house on Blossom Road in Rochester. It was in an old house that was converted into an office building. And so, everybody literally had these big bedrooms, which were their offices. And it was just a really fun place for my sisters and I to go kind of hang out while he was doing work or had to go pick up drawings or make copies or do those types of things. And then we would accompany him at different times to go visit, one of the manufacturers. Sometimes it would be on a weekend, or we might go, with him if he was taking a customer fishing or something like that. So there was always opportunities for us to kind of be around the business and to get a sense of what the business was. And in the late 70s, he actually began purchasing the shares of Irvite. And so over time, he became the owner of Irvite, and that was down in Erie, Pennsylvania. So he would go to Erie probably once a week for at least one night a week, just to kind of look after how things were going. It was a pretty big ongoing entity with about 300 employees. And so we would on occasion travel down with him and then just sort of, again, be hanging out at the factory and seeing what was going on and sort of, wandering around and, learning through osmosis, for lack of a better term. So it was definitely very interesting. So folks have in the past asked me, how I got involved or when I got involved in the business. And it's kind of an interesting story, but I was going to the University of Vermont. My dad never really talked to me about joining the company or that there was a role for me in the organization. I have 3 older sisters and they were not in the business. And so I was graduating and had been interviewing with Raytheon, and I was on my 3rd interview with Raytheon down in Waltham. And as I was heading down to Waltham, again, it's before cell phones, my dad had called me and said, gee, I'm really surprised you don't want to work for the family company. And I was perplexed and said, I'm really surprised you never brought this up until I'm headed for my 3rd interview and basically getting ready to take a job with Raytheon with their financial management development program. So he said, while you're down in Boston, why don't you meet with the 2, salespeople that we have that work down there? Both are retired now, but a guy named Ron Martin and Doug Locker. And so I did. I sat down with them, learned a little bit more about what they do, what interested them in the business. And, Doug Locker was retiring. And so my dad had kind of positioned it that, if there was ever a time, and since I wanted to move to Boston, maybe the stars were in alignment that I should join the organization. So I ended up not going to work for Raytheon, and I took the job with the company, started out in Boston basically with no accounts, no new business per se. And I was basically just focused on business development. Eventually, Doug Locker retired, and I kind of inherited Doug's accounts once he did. But, it was a really challenging business. And again, at the time, it sounds crazy, but email just started in my first year in business. My first account was an AOL dial-up account, and I was probably the only person in the organization that had email, so that kind of defined, I was sort of the beginning of technology, if you will. And not to say that I'm great at technology now, but I was the beginning of where we started to make a transition into different types of technology and CRMs and, managing the business with new tools. So that's kind of how I came into the organization. It's interesting how I moved into management and then eventually ownership. It was much the same as my career started out. I was getting ready to buy a house in Boston. And, my dad then was surprised that I was buying a house in Boston. And, was I sure that I wanted to settle in Boston and not, come back and be involved with the management of the company? And once again, I was a little perplexed that we hadn't had the conversation before I was getting ready to go through, another major milestone. And so at that point, I kind of decided that, it would make sense. I really enjoyed growing up in Western New York in the Finger Lakes region. There was access to a lot of things that I didn't have in Boston, like the lakes and, being able to play golf and things like that were available in Boston, but not accessible. And so that was definitely one of the reasons I moved back. And so again, I took on a territory where someone was retiring in New York and continued to work on building, a book of business here in New York. And then over time got more and more involved in management until a time when my dad eventually wanted to retire. And then, over about a 10-year period, I bought out his shares of the company and became the sole owner of Lupton Associates.
It's been a continuation. When Al Sr. kind of went into retirement, Al Jr. was there to take his place, and Al Jr. had been there for years. So Al Jr. knew what was going on because he'd been part of Lupton Associates for years. It just kind of nurtured and grew, and Al Sr. and Jr. were always very professional. They treated their employees well, they treated their customers well, and their suppliers, and that continues today.
I think it would be that we've continued to stick to our roots in that, serving our manufacturers is the most important job that we do, and in going out and bringing new opportunities to them, which in turn allows them to grow and create more jobs, for families that are there in their region. So I think that's probably it. And, we've had some phenomenal growth over the last 55 years. And so I think he would be really proud and happy of that. He always would make the joke that we've been, pick the year. Now the joke would be we've been going out of business for 55 years. And that just was, that there was always a new crisis. I remember in the 70s when I was growing up, it was when, the Japanese had started getting really big into manufacturing, and, all the jobs were moving to Japan. And then, later on it became China and India. And so there was always this concern that the U.S. manufacturing was going to become completely irrelevant, and, our livelihoods would all disappear because all those, jobs and opportunities would have gone to other parts of the world. So I think he'd be excited that we've continued to evolve and we've continued to serve many of the same manufacturers and continue to help each other grow. So one of the ways that I've honored my dad's legacy is probably continuing on with the exact same core values I think that we've had since we started. And, they're core values that are in my family as well. But probably the biggest one is just around fairness and, fairness in business, whether it be your customer, whether it be the manufacturer, or whether it be one of the team members in our organization. Everybody always wants to be treated, the same way that you'd want to be treated, whether that be, making a recommendation to a customer that is the right recommendation for the customer, making sure that it's the best process for them in the long run, not taking a short-term sale that may, in the long run impact negatively the customer, and identifying up front to say, this probably isn't a good fit for us. And then just as importantly, when it is a good fit, going after it passionately and not giving up, and trying to work closely with both the manufacturer and the customer to sort through, how can we help each other get to the finish line so that we both have a win. Again, some of the core values around fairness, around, always doing the right thing, and around just treating people how you want to be treated, were very strong values of my dad, and they're strong values of our organization today, and ones that we just don't waver from.
It's about the impact that we have on the lives of the people that work at the companies that we represent. Again, I think early on in my career, after I traveled out to some of the principals that we represent, that I began to get a feel for the number of people that work there, the number of people that, again, we were having an opportunity to impact. And it just gives you a feeling of that you're doing this for a higher calling. And so, again, this week I was at our plant in Mexico where we employ over 1,400. Many of our plants employ in the hundreds. And so you just begin to get, a clear understanding that we have a responsibility to do our job to the best of our ability, because these people are counting on us. And they pay their bills and they feed their families based on the work that we bring them. I do this for that same reason. I have 3 children. I love my family. I want to provide for them the best I can. And I know that these people that are working on the assembly lines and in the factories that we represent, they're doing the same thing. And so it gives you a feeling of togetherness, and it gives you, again, a higher purpose than you're just doing it for a paycheck. And again, we all want to get paid. We want to make as much as we can. I don't apologize for that. But again, I think just the feeling of being in a company that we're a part of something much larger than ourselves gives our job greater meaning. And it just provides motivation for me when I'm away from my family. I'm traveling in airports all the time, staying in hotels. Those things I don't enjoy. But I do enjoy the fact that I realize that the impact we're making, the people that we're helping employ, the programs that we're winning, and the difference that that's making, that's a really good feeling. And I think that is just a part of why I feel like working here is such a blessing, and that, again, it's making an impact on more than just my little world. It's making a big impact on the larger world overall. And so that's really one of the things that I just am so grateful for. And I think Alan, again, I loved his dad, and I love Alan. He's kind and he's honest, and again, he's driven, and he will push you to be your best, and he will demand excellence. But I like that, and I think that I work for somebody that I think cares about me, cares about my family, cares about the well-being of my family, and I think I'm more than a number. And so, when they hired me, and it was something I had never heard at the time, and this really came from Al Sr., is if you can do the job, and of course it's sales, it's really hard, but if you can do the job, they hire you for life. And really, I've never updated my resume since I came on board 28 years ago, and hopefully, Lord willing, I'll be here whenever I retire.
I think the family aspect of the business kept me here. Being in the home office is a little bit different than being in the field, so I interface more frequently with the L's, and as a result of that, I had more of a pulse on what was going on in the marketplace. But they're always great about family situations. I can recall a time when I think I had 2 sick children, and my wife had a conference that she was at, and I literally had to take them to the doctors, and we had an appointment, and Al's like, I'll take care of this. You go ahead and deal with that, and I'll catch up with you afterwards. And I think that's not the case with all companies today. I think that family comes first at Lupton's. The other thing I think that's unique about what we do is there's almost a brotherhood amongst all the reps. I talk to most of the people that we work with on a regular basis, sometimes as much as weekly. We'll get a phone call from several of the guys that we work together, and I think that collaborative effort is really what makes a difference with Lupton's.
I think the culture of our company is based on collaboration with our customers, with our principals, with the people that we represent, and within our organization. And I think it's also based on, again, honesty and integrity. I mean, we are, I made it very clear when I came on board, and again, this matched up with Al Sr. and with Alan and Graham, that I wasn't going to lie, cheat, or steal for anybody. And it didn't matter whether it was for this job or something else. And so I think that they have been aligned with that from the very beginning, and I think that's what the company was founded on. And I think, again, we have a collaborative nature of, wanting to work with our customers to find solutions that are best for them, and that it is all based on doing the right thing. And always honesty is the forefront, and I won't compromise that for anyone. And the company's never asked me to, and I always felt like that was what we were based on, and that our customers knew that if we recommended someone to do their work, that they could trust us, because we were basing that on an honest opinion, not on trying to make a sale or get a quick PO. It was always about doing the right thing. And so that resonated with my soul from day one, and today I still feel like that's the culture of our company, and I think as long as Alan's in charge, that will be the way it is.
So the norm was always dealing with stretch goals and opportunities and chasing Moby Dick, as we called it, meaning going after the big customer. And they were always very supportive in that. The L's, either one of them was always and still are, at the beck and call. If you need some help, they'll always support you from that standpoint and give you the tools you need to make it happen. So I still have remained close to some of the individuals that have either left the company or retired. And I think that it's kind of a form of a brotherhood or fraternal scenario. We work together as a group, as a team. Even though it's individual efforts for making sales calls and those kinds of things, I think we share information pretty openly and support one another as well. And I think that's another unique part about the culture of Lupton's and part of our success. Maybe that's a secret, but I do think it's part of our success as a group.
So as I look forward, probably some of the things that excite me most about our organization and about our industry is we have a unique front row seat as new products and new technologies are rolling out. So, in the past few years, we've been heavily involved in the data center space. It's just very interesting to learn about customer technologies and learn about, why they're rolling out or why technology is evolving. And we play a very small role in helping them commercialize their products, but it's a super critical role. And it's a role that it's just exciting to be engaged in, and then to see products when they come to fruition and know that you influenced in a positive way both how that product is made, but also impacted, in many cases, hundreds of people's livelihoods by helping create jobs or maintain jobs in manufacturing, that otherwise maybe could have gone to a competitor or they could have gone somewhere else. So, for us, it's very exhilarating to know that we are shaping other people's lives by creating great opportunities that, not only create products, but also create opportunities for people to build families.
The Lupton group has always been very professional, and I think we've treated each other with respect, and it's going to continue.
Look at that. You see that? You know that I have a ring for him. It's Darth Vader.
I hear that. That's funny.
Yeah, and it comes up. You see the little thing. It's got Vader.
Yeah.